For example, you look at political liberalism. They were with origin from the French Revolution. As you remember, there was 3 slogans: liberty, equality, and fraternity, or brotherhood. Now we tend to have built this around political liberalism in terms of almost radical individualism. But what we forget is that the third part of that slogan, which is brotherhood, I think that this is a reference to the unity of society. And so this is kind of fundamental of sociology, which is that we have to find a balance between the individual and the group. Once you have radical individualism, it begins to tear away at the common group identity, and eventually it will fragment the group. 1945, this had to be addressed, that some of the uglier sides of capitalism had to be contained. And we kind of had a different form of capitalism until the 70s and 80s, in which we then reverted back to unfettered markets in response to the stagnation in the 70s. And I also point out that a lot of this should have been reversed after the Cold War, but I think there was an ideological hubris, the assumption that markets could do everything. So I think that this was the excesses of liberalism, in which both the economic and political, which failed to look at social cohesion, and I think that this is what creates a lot of civilizational decay. Well, I think a lot of the return to neo-mercantilism is simply a reflection of the international distribution of economic power, because historically we see that liberal economic systems evolve or develop when there's a clear hegemony, such as Britain in the 19th century, or when the US took over in the 20th century. Because under such conditions, the hegemon has an interest in creating trust. Because once there's trust in the international system, countries will not seek to control everything themselves. They will accept more integration, more open borders. And there's an interest in an economic hegemon to support this when they're the most powerful. So will you allow, if you're the United States, new powers to rise which can challenge your authority, like China? No, at this point you have to weaken the rise of adversaries. So you have to undermine its ability to develop its technological autonomy. You want to threaten its reliance on transportation corridors, undermine its access to the international reserve currency, the banks, etc., etc. Not just China, but of course Russia as well, for that sake. Problem is, once the United States begin to weaponize its administrative control over the international economy, it only increased the incentives for other countries to decouple. And I guess that's what you're seeing now, because even American friends of America, be it Turkey or India, they will also be punished by the United States if they do not follow the unilateral sanctions of the US. So there is the more authoritarian or the more the United States weaponizes this control, the more you will see countries have incentive to move away from it. And I think that's one of the things we have really seen in this war, for example, that it's not just the Russians who are being sanctioned. Anyone can have their bank accounts taken away, their money. Yeah, I don't think it matters who sits in the White House. Keep in mind, when Trump unleashed all of this economic war against China, Biden, Clinton, they all said, "Oh, what is he doing? This is uncalled for." However, after Trump went out, you had Hillary Clinton writing articles in Foreign Affairs saying, "We need powerful industrial policies," which is neo-mercantilism. You take government to fund your technological advancement. You use your economic resources, align it with state power to weaken adversaries. So they follow the exact same policies, and whoever comes after Biden, they will do the same. Keep in mind that when the British were dominant, especially in the early in the 1800s, the Americans developed what they called the American system. We had 3 main pillars. They said, we need our own manufacturing industry, we need our own more efficient transportation corridors, so roads and ports. Later on, they added rail once that became, an innovation, and of course to have their own national bank. So these are kind of the 3 pillars, and we see the same now coming from China, which is obviously leading this. Which is one, they're seeking very ambitious industrial policy to take a technological leadership in most of the new technologies associated with the fourth industrial revolution. We also see that they're pouring trillions of dollars into this Belt and Road Initiative for this physical connectivity, new transportation corridors not vulnerable to US pressure. And of course, the third is the financial aspect, which is development of new national banks or new development banks, diversifying away from the US dollar as a currency, but also setting up new payment system, not being too dependent on, for example, SWIFT, which can be used to, well, by weapon by the United States. BRICS becomes an institution to further build on these ideas. That is, bring together a huge amount of countries which have large controls a lot of the natural resources of the world, the populations of the world, a lot of the trade. They can set up their own transportation corridors, their own banks. They can set up new technological hubs, centers to cooperate with each other. And so there's a lot of potential. Well, if you just look at the math of it, the attrition rates with every Ukrainian, Russian soldier wounded or killed, you have, for example, 8 on the Ukrainian side. Now, this is a reflection of, for example, the artillery. Most casualties in this war is caused by artillery. And the Russians have 8 to 10 times more artillery. We see now 8 to 10 of attrition ratio. So I don't see them winning it. Also, I see the West having run out of our weapon storages have become empty, and also there's a war fatigue setting in, that the people are becoming less interested in this. Well, what's going to happen with Europe? They're going to be completely dependent on the United States, which means that all these dreams about sovereign autonomy or European independence, it's all gone. Well, I think that having a militarized dividing line in Europe will definitely weaken Europe. It will make this continent into a new Middle East, if you will, where great powers use them. So they become effectively a chessboard. And I think that's what we already saw with Ukraine. And that problem in Ukraine will be spread across Europe.